Okay, perfect. And good afternoon, and thank you for joining us tonight or this afternoon for a wonderful session with a very special guest that I'm going to introduce in a moment. But before we go any further, I really want to thank you for joining us today. We are, as the position that I'm in now, former primary school teacher, very conscious of the craziness that our education world brings. And we're really, really thrilled that you've been able to take some time out to be here today. If you are watching it live, thank you. If you are watching the recording, thank you as well. The recording is available until the end of the year, and all of our webinars are here as a resource that you can come back to whenever you have the time to be able to engage in this learning. So this afternoon's webinar is, of course, titled Supporting Emerging Mathematical Drawing, and we have the incredible Associate Professor Jennifer Way with us today, which I will introduce in a moment. But before we do that, for those of you that are not aware and new to the early childhood stream, that we have an incredible membership base here at MAV. We are starting to broaden our offerings for the early childhood space, and the webinars are just one of that piece. We also have a monthly bulletin that is sent out to all of our members that includes links to academic literature, practitioner reflections, and resources that you can use right now in your classrooms or in your settings. We also have an early childhood stream at the Melbourne Mathematics Conference this year, which we have as a keynote Professor Marek Tessa from the University of Melbourne, and he has got some incredible insights to share. We also have a full suite with, I think, 9 sessions to choose from. So we would love to see you there if that is something that you're interested in. To begin with, we'd love to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional custodians of the land in which MAV is located. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend those respects to all First Nations people, recognising them as the first and original ongoing custodians of this land. And what we all came for, Associate Professor Jennifer Way, who is goodness, bear with me, sorry about that, who is a specialist in early childhood and primary mathematics and STEM education at the University of Sydney. I have actually been so lucky to be in a few of Jennifer's sessions live, and her research and the passion that you show for maths education, Jennifer, is just incredible. So we were so delighted when you accepted the opportunity to be here with us today. Thank you. I will stop sharing and share Jennifer's slides. And here they are.
And just while you're doing that, I'll also acknowledge that I'm currently on the south coast of New South Wales in the Dharawal country. In particular, where I am in Kiama, it's the Wadi Wadi tribe of the First Nations people. So I pay my respects also.
Thank you for that. Of course, that's well, I should have mentioned that. Apologies for that, Jennifer. Okay, I should be. Everyone crossing their fingers? Did it work?
Yes, thank you so much. So there's some build slides in there, so I might just say click or something like that if you wouldn't mind to advance.
Totally
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the welcome, and I'm very pleased to be here. Hello to anyone watching live, and hello to anyone watching at a later date. So yes, I'm from the University of Sydney, and what I'm talking to you about today comes from, as well as building on the research of many other people in the past, comes from my own research projects. And on the left-hand side there, there's 3 of them that are listed. So you might see some references on some of the slides to those projects. And all of these projects have involved, except the thinking tools one, which was lower primary, the other 2 projects have been with 4 to 8-year-olds. All right, so very much in that early childhood space, but also bridging across into the school years. Click. Thanks, Diane. Okay, so there's three things I want to talk about today. One is the early drawing development, and as most of you will be involved in that preschool age group who are watching, that will be of particular interest to you. And then I'm going to move on to talk about what do we mean by mathematical drawing, early mathematical drawing. And that will bridge across into primary school to show where it's going. Then I'll finish off with some teaching advice, some tips about what you can do to support children's emerging mathematical drawing. Click. Okay, so first of all, a bit of an overview of the stages of development in children's drawing. And this should seem, some of this will be familiar to you because, you've seen children draw, and how their drawing changes over a number of years. So it begins really as soon as they're able to hold some sort of a mark-making tool, typically around one. So in that period from 1 to 3 years, we can call this the scribble phase. It begins with quite random movements, but then becomes gradually more controlled as their fine motor development kicks in. Next, please, Di. Then in the 3 to 4 year range, we should be able to see children beginning to become a bit more controlled and regulated. It's no longer this wild scribbling, but they're actually starting to create what are called forms, such as circles or wavy lines and strokes. And then once they've been doing that for a while, they begin combining these forms to make things that look like the sun or a little person, that sort of thing. Next one, please. Then around 4 to 5 years of age, for the first time, and this is part of their cognitive development as well as their fine motor control, they gradually realize that they can draw things that represent real objects. This is a major turning point. This is the critical turning point where they actually realize that they can create representations of their world. Next one. Right, then finally, and so now we're bridging across into the first years of school. This is where they further develop their patterns and what's called schemas. That's just their patterns of drawing. And we begin to see picture making and things coming into their drawing, like attending to the vertical, horizontal, the relative size of things, perspective, and so on. Now, as you know, children develop at different rates, and these are sort of broad stages of development. But the critical thing is that children all over the world go through these phases, maybe at different speeds, but this is how drawing develops. Okay, thanks, Di. So I want to spend a bit of time talking in a bit more detail about these stages of development, to give you time to think about what you've seen and what you might look for in the future when you're observing children's drawings. Okay, so in this first phase, approximately 1 to 3 years of age, drawing is part of play. It's a natural, playful use of hand movement and mark making. And you may see that the children use their mark making to reflect their feelings or moods, but they might also be reflecting what they're thinking about or images that are coming to their mind. But it's still very playful and free form. As they begin to get greater fine motor control, and that's a really important part of drawing development, you'll see them experimenting with the different forms. And on the screen are some of the 26 basic forms that have been identified that children discover for themselves through play. And, you know, you can see the different movements, the round and round, or the zigzagging, or the single strokes, circling around, making waves, dots and commas, and those sorts of marks. So I'm sure you will have observed those at some point. That little bit of green scribble on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that that is sort of a combination of those round and round circle making, but also of loops. So they're not just circling on the spot, but they've started, you know, moving across the page to create loops in their circle movement. So that's the sort of thing we want to see happening in that period. Thanks, Di. Now, moving into the 3 to 4 year period, they get a bit more refined and they create 16 formal units. Now, I think this is amazing that children all over the world come up with these same 16 units. The ones that are sort of in that reddy orange, the circles and the strokes, they're the most commonly used units. The ones in blue at the top there, you can see they're all closed shapes, and they will gradually, you know, develop into geometric shapes, closed shapes, polygons, if you like. The brown ones towards the bottom of the frame there, they're all open shapes. You can see that they're made with continuous lines or a number of lines, but they're open-ended. They're not enclosing a space. And that little picture there done by somebody, you can see is just quite typical of children who discover I can make the same form over and over and over again, and they'll, you know, fill a whole page with just repeating that shape just for the joy of creating that same shape over and over. We want to encourage that and celebrate it. They're practicing. Okay, then they move into combining. They're still playing, they're still experimenting and exploring, but they begin combining some of the forms. And there's some examples of the way that they may combine them there on the screen. Click, please. Now, that's when they start realizing, oh, that thing I've done, it reminds me of a person. And, you know, often adults will reinforce this and say, oh, you drew a baby, or you drew a little person, or something like that. Now, it's accidental, but once they realize that they can use this little configuration as a symbol that stands for something else, this is their first step to realizing that their drawing can actually represent real things. All right. Before that, it was playful mark making. Now they're on that point of making that change. It's a cognitive change as well as, you know, a change in the way they're using their playful drawing. Next, please.
And can I just ask a question, Jenny?
Sure.
So, and is it so? It's rather than the child sets out to draw a picture of a person, it's more that they've come to it through their discovery.
That's right.
Oh, that's incredible.
Right. Yeah. And until they reach that point, you saying draw a person doesn't make any sense to them.
No,
It's what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that because us silly adults sometimes put our foot in it. And that's one of the things I want to make you more aware of through giving these examples. Okay, thanks, Di. Indeed, I've got a slide in here with a little cautionary note. Okay. So the children at this point are still in what we might call a pre-representational stage of development. They're just on the verge of understanding that their drawings can represent things. And this is where adults can accidentally, unintentionally Suggest to the children that their drawings are inadequate because they're not representing things. Click. So the way to avoid making this accidental error is refrain from asking them to draw particular things. Draw me a tree, draw me a person. If they're not ready to use their drawing as representation, that won't make sense to them, and it could even upset them because they don't understand. And you may be kind of suggesting, well, your drawing isn't really very good because you can't draw a tree or a person. They begin to feel inadequate. So, and the other thing is, avoid asking them, what is it? What have you drawn? You'll either get a blank look or no answer at all, or they might just tell you any random thing that comes into their head. And if you ask them the same question about the same picture an hour later, they'll tell you something different because it isn't a drawing of anything. So they'll just make something up to satisfy you. Instead, until you're sure they have made that transition to representing things, just say, oh, tell me about the drawing that you're doing. And they might just use a gesture to show you what they've been doing, or they might talk about the colors, or they mightn't have anything to say, but perhaps you're avoiding making them feel inadequate by just saying, tell me about your drawing, without assuming it's the drawing of something.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so moving into the 4-5 period here. So this is sort of immediately prior to starting to school. They've began experimenting more with their ideograms, you know, those sort of accidental discoveries of some symbols that can stand for real things. So they explore that idea a bit further. Click, please, Di. And they start discovering that there's sort of these little symbols that they can draw to represent things, like smoke. They might draw a curly line, waves are these wavy lines, zigzags for lightnings, dots and strokes for rain. And people, adults might influence this with if they're watching other people draw, older children or adults draw, and they do these things, they'll adopt them. Click, please. Some other things they might learn is, oh, this is what a house, this is what I can draw, and people will understand it's a house. Or this is how I draw a rainbow. Or someone might show them, you can do a bird like this. And so they practice these things and begin using them. And this is helping bridge them over into this idea of representation. Click, please. And here we've got some examples of drawings where they're repeating some things that they've learned how to draw, like the star in this top one, and their way of drawing children, girls, whatever. And then the second one, again, they're practicing drawing these symbols that they're discovering, remind people of real things. So they're becoming more deliberate now in representing. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we are now in the 5 to 7 years when most children will have started school. And this is where their kind of picture creation kicks in. That they've got a bit of a repertoire of things that they can draw now. And so they start making use of them to represent things that they're thinking about or experiences that they've had. So this is deliberate representation. So they begin seeing, if I draw things a certain way, it looks like this other thing, this real object, right? So they're now trying to represent things in their drawing. And they start playing around with how to compose things into pictures. Now, if you have a look at that top drawing, this is a child's drawing of things that are happening in the playground. So you can see hopscotch and hula hoops and balls and girls with skipping ropes. And it's just kind of filling the page with things, but it's a picture of an experience that they've had.
Mm-hmm.
The lower picture, can you see it's more organized, a baseline? The people are all standing on the baseline. We've got relative sizes of adults and children. We've got a recognition that the strings are going up and the balloons are up in the air, and we've got the sun up there in the sky. And so they're beginning to think actually geometrically. They're getting vertical, horizontal, proportion. And this is mostly without being taught. This is still part of their natural development, although they are being influenced at this point by what they see and things they might be introduced to by adults. I've just got to tell you about this bottom black and white picture here. This is a drawing of a child who has they visited their mum in hospital who has just given birth to twins. Mum is very tired. She's asleep. You can see, if you look closely, there's love hearts around expressing the child's emotions. And you can see the little girl standing beside the crib there with the two twins in it. So there's just so much emotion and experience in that sort of drawing. Thank you.
It's even got the little Z's coming out.
Yeah,
as in the sleeping.
Yes, the sleeping. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Okay, so let's have a look at what I mean by mathematical drawing and how is this different from their natural drawing development. Okay, thank you. Right, so on the left side here, we've got natural drawing development, their early drawing, which we've already gone through. Well, then when we reach this point of schematizing, that is, I've got certain ways of drawing things and I can begin using them to compose pictures. This is where they've begun using drawing as representations of other things, of the real world and so on. Now, I argue that we have a change in purpose once they start school. For some children, this begins before they start school, but it's definitely something that's expected of them once they start school. And as I said, I argue that there's a branch. Artistic drawing separates out from mathematical and scientific drawing. And so artistic drawing continues to be a way for creative expression of what their inner worlds, their feelings, experiences, and also outer world, representing things. But we ask them to use their drawing in a different way to represent mathematical ideas. And this is where children first encounter the idea that their drawings can be wrong, incorrect. For example, their teacher might say, on this paper, draw 4 balloons. Now, a child who goes, oh, balloons, there were party balloons at my birthday party last week, and they'll start, they'll fill the page with lovely, colourful balloons. Well, that's wrong, because they were asked to just draw 4 balloons, and it was the number that was important, not that joyful colour of floating balloon, that sort of thing. And so it's quite a shock to children. And I just want to talk a little bit more about mathematical drawing so that it's clear in your mind what the difference is. Next slide, please. So just a bit more about how natural drawings are different to mathematical drawings. Click. So as I've said, natural drawing, playful, artistic, pictorial. some mathematical aspects come into their drawing, but just as a tool to help them express what they want to express. Click. Now, mathematical drawing is different because the children need to work out what are the mathematical concepts and processes that I have to depict. What do I have to represent? Things like how many, number, or it might be shape, particular shapes, or it might be size and proportion. They still might have some pictorial elements included, like this subtraction story of two birds flying away. But the focus is on the mathematical content. Click. Now, where is this heading? Mathematical drawings are a transition phase into diagrams, formal diagrams. Now, in maths and science, these diagrams have all the other features stripped away from them, all the other contextual features, and they're only showing mathematical features and spatial structures. So they are abstract. Diagrams are abstract representations. Okay, thanks, Di. So, as I said, early mathematical drawing development is important. It's critical. The children are not going to be able to progress to mathematical drawings if they haven't already gone through that natural drawing development to that representational phase. So there's the research that's been done shows that early drawing, so what children are able to draw at age 4, reflects their general cognitive development. It also reflects their fine motor control and their hand dexterity. So it's got that physical aspect as well as the cognitive aspect. But it also, to some extent, predicts their future mathematical ability at age 12. Okay, that's really important. What you're doing with them in their drawing development in preschool is already shaping how they're going to cope with their mathematical learning throughout primary school. Okay, now this correlation is partly because what they're able to draw indicates their spatial ability. And spatial thinking is interconnected with pretty much all other mathematical thinking. It's all connected. Okay, so supporting that gradual development of children's own drawing skills empowers them to notice mathematical features and structures and relationships, and so it's going to help them in their mathematical understanding. That's how it's all connected. Right, so I'll just talk a little bit more about why self-created mathematical drawings are important. So what I'm emphasizing is it's the children that need to do the drawing. It's not teachers presenting them with pre-made drawings. It's the children creating their drawings that this applies to. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just continuing, why this is important in helping you understand how drawing development contributes to their mathematical learning. During that school years, it's drawing and gradually moving into the more formal diagrams. This is providing a bridge from their concrete mathematical experiences, modeling and using real objects and so on, and the abstract understanding. So it's that bridge. So if they aren't able to create drawings or diagrams, they're missing that really important bridge. And it makes it harder for them to move from the concrete to the in-mind abstract thinking. Sorry, my phone. The other thing is that mathematical drawing is a problem-solving tool, and there's a whole bunch of research to show that the children who haven't got sufficiently developed mathematical drawing skills don't have that problem-solving tool, and they are not able to perform as well in problem solving, in a whole range of mathematical problem solving. Because drawing helps with working memory, it helps with reasoning. The other reason that children being able to create their own drawings effectively is because it's a pathway to understanding the diagrams and drawings that they are presented by teachers with, formal diagrams like graphs and multiplication grids and all that sort of thing. They've been constructed by adults and mathematicians and people who already understand the mathematics that's being represented by these drawings and diagrams. If children don't learn to create them themselves, it's much harder for them to understand the meaning behind these drawings and diagrams that have been created by adults and mathematicians. So they have to learn the conventions of mathematics. Something like the number line, for example, is a mathematical diagram. Mm-hmm. If children can't draw their own number line, it's really, really hard for them to understand number lines that have been drawn by others.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is just emphasizing the different functions that drawing can play. Drawings are both thinking tools and communication tools. So the sort of things, sort of drawing actions that serve as thinking tools is when it's sketching to explore emerging ideas. How if you're trying to make sense of something, particularly spatial information, you might kind of sketch things in position or location or something. You're using drawing as a thinking tool to help you think something through and explore ideas. It can help you make sense of new information or a new experience. And as I said, it's a problem-solving tool that helps the thinking processes. On the other hand, it can be a communication tool where you've already got some knowledge, some understanding, some visual images, whatever. It's coming from within, and here I can draw it for you and show you. I'm communicating my thinking through creating a drawing. It also is needed sometimes to communicate your ideas, a display of data, a design you've got for something, or the measurements that you've taken. It also can be communicating what you are able to observe. I can see this, and I'm drawing it as a record of what I have noticed and what I can observe. Okay, next slide, please. So, how do you know where your children are at? Whether they are in preschool or in early years of school? Yes, you can observe. That's the main thing. Look, are they still in the scribble phase? Have they started to create forms? Have they started to use representational drawing? You should be able to see those things from just watching them and observing them. But you may get to a point where you want to assist them. And then you need to know more clearly where they're at. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to show you some examples. Now, here's a task that we've used from preschool through to year 2. We've just asked children, invited them to respond to this story, and it's just given to them as a story. 5 birds sat on a fence. 2 birds flew away. Draw what happened in the story. So it's not posed as a mathematical problem. It's just a story that does happen to have some numbers in it, and we're just seeing how they respond to that story. And so we're just going to look at some examples. So first example, please. Now, we can see this is the scribble stage, and that says, no, we cannot expect them to be doing mathematical drawings yet. They're still in that very early development stage. Next example. they're able to represent something from the story. Here we have a bird and the fence. Now, they haven't represented anything mathematical, but this shows us that they are starting to use their drawing as a representative tool. And that tells us they need some more time to continue their development, but they're getting towards being able to do mathematical drawing. Next one. Okay, so here's an example of a drawing where a child has noticed something about the numbers in the story. And here we've got the two birds that are flying away. So it's not the complete story, but they're beginning to represent mathematical ideas. And the next one, here they've attempted to represent the whole story, which of course is actually a subtraction operation, a takeaway subtraction. And we've got the 5 birds, but we've got the separating of 3 birds are staying on the fence and 2 are flying away. So that is an example of mathematical drawing, and they may be ready to even move further. Now, this child was only about 5.5, right? Okay, next. Here's something else. Again, we ask preschool children through to year 2 to draw something tall and something short. Here's an example of, all right, we can see scribble, some uncontrolled scribble and some controlled scribble. I've put there need to discuss because they may have actually been thinking about something tall and something short, but they're not representing through their drawing. So they've been invited to draw, so they've done some drawing, but it's not representing what they may have been thinking about tall and short. If you talk to them, they might say a giraffe is really tall. So they're responding to the mathematical idea, but they can't respond through their drawing yet. Okay, next example. Sometimes children will just draw one object and you think, oh, that's a dinosaur, by the way, not a frog. And they've drawn something that they know is really tall, often in comparison to them. And so again, if they've drawn something here, yes, they're beginning to represent ideas, but we're not sure. We can't really tell. And so you need to talk to them about what they've drawn and see whether there's a connection to tall and short thinking. Next example. Sometimes they draw 2 or multiple objects that are of a similar height. So they've got the idea that you need multiple things to have a comparison, but they haven't regulated their drawing to create an example of something tall and something short. Again, you need to discuss with them. Next, please.
Can I ask a question? Would this also be if it was like if they were to represent a picture of a flower and a building, but they represented them as the same size? So they recognize that a flower is shorter than a building, but their representation hasn't got the orientation.
Yeah. And that's why you need to discuss with them to find out what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Because that's highlighting a really, really important point, is that their mathematical thinking may be quite a ways in advance of what they are able to represent in drawing yet, because their drawing development just hasn't gone far enough yet to connect strongly with their mathematical understanding.
Yeah, so interesting.
And I should point out that you can't tell how old the children are from these drawings. All right, I'm going to show you D and E and put them both up. Put the next one up, please.
Oh.
Some of these drawings were done by 4-year-olds, and some were done by children as old as 8. You can't tell by looking how old the child is. That's a really important point. Okay, so here we've got 2 things that are clearly different sizes. It's, they're representing and it's the beginnings of a mathematical drawing. But the most sophisticated one is where they're on an equal baseline and you've got the comparison thing happening. Okay. All right, thank you. So I think the next slide is some results from, okay, so this is results from one school doing that tall and short drawing task. And this is results from 109 children, 109 drawings. I'll just give you a moment to make sense of that table. So you can see the drawing categories I've just given examples of down the left. And then how many children in each of those age levels, year levels, did a drawing like that. Could you click again, please? And so on the whole, 67% of the children created drawings of recognizable objects and made some sort of distinction between their heights. So that, they were quite successful in using representational drawing to convey some mathematical ideas. But click again. This is the bit that's concerning. So almost 20% of the children had not yet reached a representational drawing level. Right? So that means they are, if you like, already disadvantaged in their mathematical development because their drawing development is falling way short of what they need to express their mathematical thinking.
Mm.
Okay, and the fact that there's still children in year one, like 7 years of age, who haven't begun representing, they're still scribbling. Some children just, all they could do was put dots on the page. That was their only response to an invitation to draw. That's really concerning. Okay, next, please. Just checking the time. Okay. Just very quickly, this is another task, is where you show the children something that's fairly straightforward to recreate and just show it to them for 5 seconds and say, draw what you saw. Okay, let's have a quick look. So this is beyond scribble and they've got a closed shape, but they're still very early in that development of noticing geometric features. Next one. There's some structure here. We can see some, that sort of right angles and we've got that shape and there's some lines in the middle, but, as soon as they start embellishing it, they've kind of lost the plot. Next. Here, these drawings capture 2 aspects of structure.
Mm.
There's the closed shape and intersecting lines in the middle, right? So they've got 2 of the things represented there. And the next one, as you might imagine, captures all the important features. So they've got this coordinated structure, and that's the sort of quite advanced and perhaps ready to start drawing diagrams. Okay, thanks. So now we're into the teaching advice, and we're a little bit late starting. So hopefully I've left enough time for this. Next slide, please. Okay. First thing, have you ever had a child of any age say to you, I can't draw? I know I have. This is tragic. It's sad because all children all around the world naturally draw. If they are able to make a mark in any way in the dust at their feet or, with a paintbrush or a pen, they can learn to draw. And when you hear this, what it usually means is, I can't draw the way you expect me to, because that's not what drawing means to me yet. Okay, so it's an indication that the child is a pre-representational drawer. Okay. And so what we've got to try and do is prevent this very sad thing happening to children, because what it means is we've done it to them as adults by expecting them to do things too early before they've got the skills to do it. Okay, click. Okay, so what do we do about that? Lots and lots and lots of playful drawing experiences. Doesn't matter what age they are. Right? This might be a 3 or 4-year-old saying this to you. It might be an 8-year-old saying it to you. But you can't make them leap ahead in their development stages. They need time to work through those developments. You can support them and maybe accelerate it a little bit. Not sure. That's not part of my research. But what I do know is you've got to encourage them to draw every day. Every day. And if you're in working in a preschool and an early years setting, watch for the children who keep avoiding the graphics space, that don't do the drawing and the painting and don't get the chalk out on the pavement and all that sort of thing, because they're the ones in danger of not developing what they need to develop in their drawing skills. They're the ones who are starting school with no pencil grip, right? And that's just really disadvantaging to them. So they need to draw every day. Click. You've really got to focus on making it a positive experience, because you've got to get that positive disposition towards drawing. Otherwise, their development is stifled. If they're avoiding drawing, if they're not enjoying it, they're just not going to get that experience that they need. So you want to have fun activities, do things like getting them to do mark making in response to music. Allow them to express their moods through drawing. You know, if they're feeling all cross and cranky, give them a black crayon and a big sheet of paper and say, go to town. Oh, you're happy today. What do you want to draw with today? You know, and let's do some happy drawing. And give drawing as a reward for other achievements. You know, oh, that was so good. You did that beautifully. Come and do a drawing with these special pencils as a reward. You know, really build up the positive aspect. Next. Yeah. Now, if you're actually, working with children where you're beginning to expect drawing as a mathematical tool, and this is, for the into the school years, then the advice there is, when you know they're not ready to do mathematical drawing, make sure they've got other ways of communicating their thinking. When the rest of the class is expected to be drawing, and that's fine. You don't hold back on that expectation for other children, but you provide other ways for children to engage with the mathematical ideas. It might be modeling it with materials, it might be talking, explaining it, and it might often be gesturing or moving their bodies to show you what they mean and what they're thinking. You can represent numbers with your fingers just as easily as you can by drawing strokes on a page or writing a number. Okay, next. Are we okay for time? I've got a couple more slides. Yeah. Okay, so I thought it'd be helpful for you to know the difference between perceptual drawing and conceptual drawing. Perceptual drawing is like that square with the cross in it. It's draw what you see. That's actually easier for children than conceptual drawing, and I'll talk about what that is in a moment. But drawing what they see, what you're trying to do is to get children to notice particular things. And if we're, at that point where we're trying to get them to move into mathematical drawing, it's the mathematical features that they need to learn to focus on and ignore all the other details. And they gradually learn that sometimes when you're doing a drawing, not always, sometimes when you're doing a drawing, accuracy is actually important. And the example that we've done, this is with 5-year-olds. they flashed up a card that had 4 bees on it, for example, and on their little whiteboards they were asked to draw what they could see. And they were encouraged to think about how many are there and how are they arranged? What does it look like? And then reproduce that on their little whiteboards. Now, can you just go back for me?
So that jump to the next
It's
one.
okay. I know sometimes it's twitchy. To start with, as you can imagine, a lot of them started drawing the bees. And the teacher was gradually saying, well, we only need to know how many, and we only need to know where they are placed. Do we really need to spend all that time drawing the bees? And she'd put up another one, and some children would go, oh, and they just drew dots. And so the teacher would show the other children, oh, that tells us how many, and it tells us where they are. And look how fast you were, and you didn't need to draw the bees. And she'd only had to repeat that 3 times, and all the children accepted that they could use the dots to represent what was important, the number and the position. Okay, so you can coach them quite quickly. And you can do things like, I'm going to clap my hands, do a dot for every time you hear me clap, right? It's part of their number thinking. Okay, thank you. You can, to encourage children at all phases, but particularly those that you've noticed, have poor hand dexterity, moving their hands, get them to use their fingers and hands and use gesture to hear these kids are practicing writing the numerals, how to write the numerals, and they're tracing over with their fingers how to draw the numeral, and then they're drawing it on a friend's back, and the friend has to guess what numeral it is that they've drawn. So this is activating the sense of touch. It's practicing how to move the hand. It's noticing the structure and the features. So you can start doing this with preschoolers in that year prior to school, and it's definitely can be used in school. This middle picture, the child drawing on the iPad, she was legally blind. She's got really super thick glasses and needs extra supports and so on. But she, in just a few weeks through doing these tracing exercises, was going in leaps and bounds in being able to control her fine motor and actually draw and write things that she wanted to draw and write. So made a big difference. And a bit more advanced, holding a pencil this time and rehearsing the drawing of a shape by tracing over it. And when they've traced over it several times, then they draw it themselves, and they're much more accurate because they've rehearsed. Click. So activate the sense of touch and practice hand movement, but you as a teacher can highlight features by pointing and gesturing and tracing yourself. That helps them notice features and then helps them know what to draw. Click. Last 2 slides. So I talked about perceptual drawing before. That's drawing what they see. Conceptual drawing isn't the input isn't coming from the outside, like from vision or whatever, from sight. It's coming from the inside. It's coming from what they are thinking about, what they are imagining, what they know, visual images they might have in their mind. And this is often used as a form of mathematical assessment, particularly in the first few years of school. All this work that teachers do around work samples, so many of them include drawings that we expect children to communicate their mathematical understanding through drawing. I suggest that it is not a valid form of assessing mathematical understanding unless you have also been teaching them how to draw mathematically. It's just not a fair assessment, because unless you've been teaching them how to draw mathematically, you are actually assessing what developmental stage of drawing they are up to, not what their mathematical understanding is. And this is a real point of concern in those early years of school. Okay, last slide. Now, the examples I've provided here are from primary school years, but the same applies for children who you know in preschool years, who you can see have started representing things in their drawing. And when children ask you, how do you draw a horse? Show me how to draw a tree. Can you draw a dog for me? How should you respond? You can respond by demonstrating and just showing a really simple thing. Oh, a tree, I can draw a circle and 2 sticks on the bottom. That's the trunk and the top, right? So that's just using very primitive forms. You're not going into fancy details. You're starting with something that they're likely to be able to do. A horse, oh, I don't know how to draw a horse. A horse looks a bit like a dog, doesn't it? It's got this body, and you might just draw a general shape. What else has it got? And get the child to give you instructions. It's got a neck. It's got some legs. Oh, how many legs? 4. All right. Where will we put the legs? And so co-construct drawings with children. Trying to avoid doing it for them, but co-construct drawing with them. And gradually you can demonstrate things and draw in front of them. You can do shared drawings, but you can also demonstrate how you draw and talk aloud while you're drawing. I'm drawing this because I'm thinking it's going to be like that's going to be the shape. I think this needs to be big because trees are really tall, so I'm going to do it up there. Share your thinking with them and model. And the other tip is drawing should be considered to be a work in progress, not necessarily a finished product. You can encourage them to add to it and change it or repeat the drawing and do it a bit different next time, and get children to share their drawings and talk about their drawings. Okay, better stop.
Thank you so much. Let me stop that. Do we have any questions that we'd like to ask? I know we are a little bit over time.
Apologies.
No, I feel like it was very well worth it. Thank you ever so much. I particularly loved the highlighting the continuum of stages that they went through. And I know as a foundation teacher, I have definitely been seeing like when they're scribbling and not being able to ask them exactly what they have done. So I think that's actually such a wonderful tool to be able to say, tell me about your drawing, rather than is that and just assuming that they're trying to draw a tree because that's what they're meant to be drawing or something like that. So that was really helpful. I also found really helpful that seeing often I would see students drawing a tree, for example, and it's the same tree. And now that makes sense that they've actually built up that pictorial representation of a tree.
This is how I draw a tree.
Yes. And they've just repeated that in their own like different formats. So that's been really insightful for me to be able to see that. Thank you ever so much. We will, of course, share the recording with everyone so you can go back and have a look at those different stages and how you can then use that into your own practice to be able to assess your students' drawing, but really importantly, to be able to use some of the advice that Jennifer's shared with us of prompting them to make that next stage in that transition from emergent drawing into mathematical drawing, which we, of course, know is so challenging. Thank you so, so much, everybody. I will stop the recording now. Thank you for joining us. Can't work out how to stop the recording, unfortunately. Sorry, team. It's just going to keep recording to the very end. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Jennifer, for your time. We are so grateful. We apologize for the the IT issues at the
Oh,
beginning.
it was more at my end than yours, so yeah,
No,
my apologies.
yeah, like I feel like it may be the new platform, but that's okay. We are all learning, part of a learning for everyone. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing everybody at hopefully the Melbourne conference in the middle of the year.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye, Melissa.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.